There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of ideas. I think the funding is a big piece of what's missing. And I think as a country, as parts of the ecosystem, that is something that we need to help solve.
Hello guys, welcome to Africa Tech Talks. My name is André Cavaco and I'm a business developer in Africa for over 10 years. I'm passionate about this continent and that's why I'm here communicating with you guys. Today's guest, Eduardo Clemente. Eduardo is an expert in banking, also is a mentor, but above all is an author of the book Attitude is Your Superpower. Our conversation went deep with him and we talked about many topics. I'm sure we'll have to invite him again to talk to us. Join me and my co-hosts in today's program, and if you like the channel, subscribe. If you like the video, put a like. Thank you very much. Eduardo, first of all, thank you very much for coming to the talk. It's a pleasure to have you around. And without delays, I want to know a little bit more about you, and so that you can tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you unveil your career in the financial industry, and what motivated you to set up your professional life in Angola?
Okay, thanks, Andre and Vitor and Ivo. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. We've all known each other, so that makes this much easier. It's also a very good initiative, I think, to talk about these things and put Angola in the map. And it's hard because if you do it in Portuguese, it's good for the Angola crowd, but no one outside will understand much. In English, we can reach the international market, but it's not as easy to reach the national market. But I think it's good that you guys are doing something to put Angola out there for a more international market. So congrats for the initiative. And I'm very proud to be invited and to be here. So like you said, I'm Eduardo Clemente. That's who I am. How did I start my career? So when I finished university, for some reason I thought I wanted to work in investment banking for some reason. I'm not sure I knew what investment banking was at the time, but for some reason that's what I wanted to do. And I tried for some time to apply to investment banks, which in Portugal is not, a huge market. So it was very hard to find jobs. And then, most of my colleagues ended up telling me that it would be good to start in one of the big four, either consulting or auditing. So that's what I did. I joined Deloitte. That was my first job as an auditor. But because I was very adamant that I wanted to be in the financial market, I convinced the Deloitte guys to put me in the financial market. So I started auditing banks and insurance companies. So that's how I got to come to Angola the first time to audit some banks here. And then with that, a couple of years later, I was invited to stay in one of those banks. And that's what I did. That's basically how my banking career started. And it's been, 18 years in banking by now. It's gone in a flash. So yeah, I guess that's how it started.
And Angola, why Angola?
Well, first thing is the opportunity arose at the time. So that was, I think, I'm not sure if I believe in luck, but you need luck, but you also need to be prepared for it. So the opportunity was there, but it happened because I was also there at the time in that particular bank. And what kind of drove me into it was probably two different things. One was a career opportunity. To take over a team of around 15 people at the time, to be the head of that team and to report directly to the executive committee of the bank was a challenge. I only had 2 years of experience, so it was it was quite a challenge, but I thought if this goes wrong, I'm quite young, so I can
I
go
can
back
start
and start over. Yeah. So that was one, but the second was because I've already been here in Angola before that opportunity came. I knew the country, I knew a little bit of the bank I was going to be in, and I felt that the impact I could have in that job was far bigger than the impact I was having in the job I had. So the level of things to be done, the number of projects or initiatives I could be a part of, it was a growing bank in a young financial sector. It was only 4 years after the war ended, so everything was booming at that time, and it was a recent growth. And so it was this opportunity to be part of something that can have a big impact. So I think that second part was even bigger than the first, but it was probably the second part that convinced me to take the risk of the first one, of trying something new and seeing how that would pan out and work out. And I think Angola is one of those countries that some people really love it, others don't. But for me, it was kind of, I wouldn't say love at first sight, but probably the first trip got me in love with the country. The people, the weather, the food, the culture, and I felt that it was a really nice place to come and to live and settle down. So yeah.
Something to people, so that people can think that coming to Angola is not that bad as well. It's interesting because most of the people, when we talk about I'm going to Angola or I'm going to work to Angola or to an African country, everyone is like, in Europe or in the US, everyone is like scared, and they step back. And you're giving your experience, and it's amazing to hear that you got in love with this. I think I remember when you were establishing your home, you were really into the project the first time. It's really interesting. I remember
Yeah.
those times. Besides your living in the banking system, in the banking sector, you also have another pet project, which is your author side. Your book is titled "Attitude is Your Superpower." Can you explain the viewers and listeners how did you came to realize and share the example that you have from your life, so in what you recognize the true power of your attitude?
Yeah, I think those realizations came with time and with experience and going through some stages of my career. And that's one part of why I decided to write the book, was that it's one kind of book. There's many good books. I mean, you can't read all the good books. I don't think we have enough years in our lifetime to read all the good books, but it was just a realization that I really would have welcomed to know this sooner in my career. So I thought that it would be something interesting to share for people to read, regardless of where they are in their career and how old they are. But I think it's an important realization that I came to in my own career, and because of that, I thought of sharing it in a book context. And what I realized throughout my career was that when you study and when you finish your studies and you start working, that there's this mindset that all that matters is how good technically you are. You need to be the best in, I don't know, accounting or coding, or you need to be the best architect, or you need to be the best engineer. And it's all about the technical skills. The better technical skills, the more opportunities or options you have. And I think in the beginning that kind of works in a way. It kind of opens doors that you have certain hard skills, certain things that you can do. But if you are aiming to progress, those technical skills, they have a cap of what level of responsibility you can assume, because at a certain point, it's the other skills, the so-called soft skills, that kind of make or break your opportunities of success and your opportunities of evolving in your career. How you relate to people, how positive you are you a problem solver? Are you someone that relates to people in a positive manner? So I realized with time that although, in my opinion, there were people around me, technically probably better than me, with better skills, I got the opportunity to take over more responsibility and more roles. And when I started asking people, but okay, why did you chose me? Why did you appointed me and not person X or person Y? And the common thing in all the answers was my attitude towards people, towards problems, towards the teams. So I kind of thought that there must be something in here. And then another thing that helped was we started doing, I started doing, with the evolution in my career, less technical training and more coaching, more mentorship sessions, more more training on leadership, and all of those things kind of focus less on a specific hard skill and more on your relationship with people. And one moment, one light bulb moment that kind of made this all connect was I was in one of these leadership trainings, and there was different modules of that training. Some were more leadership/coaching type of sessions. Others were more, methods, things you need to use, things you need to learn to manage, prioritization or people or tasks in a better way. And at the end of that session, what I realized was we're all learning the same thing. And so, knowledge is out there. Knowledge is accessible to everybody. So there's very few secrets now when it comes to methods, when it comes to methodologies that you can apply. So if that's true, then why is it that some people succeed and others don't when they know the same method, they know the same hard skill? And so I started thinking about all of these things. And for me, it added up that attitude and all the components that I've mentioned in the book about attitude were the differentiating factor of, reaching a different level in your career. But more than that, I think more than achieving professional success, for me, the most important thing was to realize that those things are the things that make me happier in my life, in my work and in my life. Because if you have a positive relationship with people, if you have a positive work environment, if you tackle stuff in a positive way, first you have a lot less stress because everything is tackled in a much more positive way. And second, it becomes, enjoyable. And if it's enjoyable, it's better to be there. So, all of those things kind of combine into me thinking. Initially, I didn't realize it was going to be a book. I just thought, I want to write about this. I'm not sure if it's going to be an article or, a LinkedIn post or, but when I started realizing the number of different things I wanted to touch on, then it started becoming serious. And then I realized, okay, this needs to be a book. And now I need to learn how to do this. I never done that before. So yeah.
It's interesting. And it's interesting that, so you see the beginning of the career, the foundations of the career normally are linked or connected to creating hard skills, but then you progress based on your attitude towards the work, the people, and especially here in Africa, people are warmer, right? I don't know if you feel the difference. People are warmer. It's more connected with how you relate with them. And so the attitude is really impactful on how we lead teams, how we connect with clients, with partners. So it's really interesting. And thank you for the book. Thank you for writing the book for us.
No, thanks for that, Andre. And I agree. I think, African cultures are more relationship based, and the relationships become more important. And I think that's good, because it makes people come together in a more impactful and truthful way. Is not just a job. It's not just something that we collaborate on and then everybody goes their separate way. You create deeper relationships in the work environment. I think that's quite good, but it also makes it important that for whoever comes from the outside, that they adapt. So I think, most of you know people that came from other countries. And there's a clear line between those that adapted and succeeded and those that came with the mentality of this is my way of doing and everybody needs to do things my way. It won't work. That doesn't work. You're the foreign body coming into a different culture. You're the one who needs to adapt. It's not the entire culture that needs to adapt to you. And for whoever has that mentality, failure is an assured success. So it's very hard to bring that. It's probably easier if you're moving, for example, between European countries. The cultures are different, but the methods of working are already very similar. So if you go from, I don't know, Portugal to Germany, from Germany to Italy, there's a different approach to work, a different approach to the corporate culture, to the environment. So that might be less relevant, but I guess if you move from Europe to Asia, you're going to need the same adaptation that you're using if you're coming to Africa or South America. So it's very different. And that adaptation is also something that we're not taught of in school. So we're only taught, hard stuff, maths, physics, chemistry, law, whatever. But it's all very knowledge based and not, you don't have classes on adaptation or creativity or emotional intelligence. And those are the things that will make or break not just your career, but how well you can work within your profession with other people. Because people don't like Andre because you're a great engineer. They like Andre because of who Andre is as a person. So those things I think we still lack on the educational system. And I think that's also why you see in the last probably, 20, 30 years, so many books on self-development, so many books on soft skills, because you have 18 years of learning, or 12, depending on whether you do university or not, but you don't talk about these things. So there's a lot of stuff for you to read outside of the schooling environment that touches on all of these things with examples from, various different people. Because I think people realize that is really important. That is what makes a big difference in people's lives and in people's careers. And throughout all of those years of school, no one is focusing on those. No one is teaching you how to think, how to adapt, how to create something, how to solve problems, how to deal with people, how to sell, how to influence. None of that is addressed in the schooling portfolios, at least the more traditional ones. I know that there's some alternative ones out there, and hopefully they will become more prevalent in the future. But I think that's something that kind of drives these types of books, because people still feel that there is a space for teaching and for learning on these types of subjects.
Yeah, it's so important.
That's wonderful. Eduardo, thank you so much. We'll make sure to ask our audience to visit. We'll make sure to drop the links to your book on Amazon store. I'm going to read your book the second time. I read it the first time. I'm a heavy Kindle user, so I'll do it again. And for sure. I really think that once you get a more senior roles, hard skills become a little bit less important, and soft skills are increasing importance on the corporate world, because the majority of problems that you must face are people related, right? And you have to provide them all the tools that they need to grow and prosper within the organization. But now let me invite you. Let's get started on technology. Let's get started on digital transformation and banking and so on. Yesterday, I was talking with Yesterday was the Apple's developer conference, right? So a lot of technology coming out, virtual reality is back again or not, I don't know. I'm saving my left kidney for Apple because it's 3,500 for the Vision Pro. So I don't know what is going to happen. But technology is always evolving. We've seen amazing things in the last couple of years, in the last year with artificial intelligence, and specifically on the banking industry. How do you see the role of technology evolving and impacting the banking industry specifically?
No, thanks, Ivo. I know, I'm a fan of technology, so I'm not an expert in any part of it, but I'm very curious about most technology related issues. Actually, one of the most interesting things I've done recently was a year ago, around a year and a half ago, I went to California for an executive program with Singularity University. And that was amazing. You find people from all around the world, various different sectors. And, the fun thing in those things is you have the experts giving you the lectures, but there's, a lot of experts on the the group of people attending the lecture. So I'm not sure where you find more of the experts, if it's lecturing or listening to the lectures. And I think the common thing for me is, technology will impact every sector. Banking is not immune to it. It probably started later than some other sectors in that transformation. But the key for me is that banking will not be the same, like many other sectors were not the same once technology becomes more prevalent in a lot of the things that are done with technology. There is probably one difference or probably one thing that will delay the impacts of technology in banking, which is regulators. And so it was, for example, easier for technology to impact media because it wasn't as heavy regulated as banking, for example. Even telecommunications were more impacted by technology. And you could argue that it will impact banking, and I'm sure it will. If you think of things like blockchain, for example, the potential for disruption of the banking sector. And if you think you were talking about virtual reality, if you think about what the metaverse can become as a market, and the amount of money that can be traded within the metaverse, and it won't be through the normal banking sector. It will be through NFTs or potentially even blockchain accounts. So all of those things have a tremendous potential to reinvent the way that finance is done. I think there's many examples across the world of changes that can happen through technology. But like I said, I think regulators do push back. Crypto is heavily regulated. A lot of markets accept it. Many others don't, and they forbid the use of it, usage of it. So I think it will take some time, but technology will change a lot of things. It's already changing. The way we bank, in most cases is done through this. You make transfers, you buy currency, you make payments, you can get credit. So there's a lot of things that you now do on your couch, on your phone that, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you had to go to a branch and stay in a queue and talk to someone. And it probably take days or in some cases even months, depending on the type of transaction. So there are changes that have been occurred in the banking sector. And I think it's like the Moore's law, the impact of it tends to double in a specific period. So I don't think for banking that was studied, and it's not necessarily 2 years, but the impact of technology is as exponential as its ability to improve. And so the impact in banking is happening, and it will only increase. That there's this phrase, I can't remember who said it, that the speed of technology evolution is as fast as it's ever been. It's never been this fast, but it will never be this slow ever again. And so all that we know is that it will continue to evolve faster than now. I think it's already past the level that human brain can adapt to. Things keep moving very fast. So it will impact payments, it will impact credit, it will impact traditional banking as we see it, as a deposit gatherer and a lender. This might be split. This might disappear. You might start having direct banking, one-on-one banking. You can have crowdsourcing. We already have crowdsourcers, but you can start having it for more impactful type of deals. So I think the potential for impact is huge. The impact or the potential for us to stop having banking, I think, my personal view, in the future, banking will stop being a sector or an industry. Banking will become a service provided in many different platforms. You're starting to see that a little bit already with Apple or Facebook entering the financial world.
Yeah, the pay later for Apple, right?
Yeah,
they just debuted in four installments. You can do they're partnering with what is the bank? Yeah, but they are doing I think they're going to change the game. Yes,
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs, right? Yeah.
Apple
but yeah, sorry to interrupt, Eduardo. Yeah.
No. It's those things. It's those big players that. It's not just the big players, because the big players can disrupt entire industries, but sometimes the small players that come, slowly into a market, if they have a really good offering, if they can grow that offering because they're offering something that people need, then it becomes very hard to contain them. If you think about the big techs now, think about Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they started small, and others can do the same now. And if you think about, for example, DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organizations, you start seeing investment funds built on top of blockchain capabilities with completely decentralized organizations behind it. That can be the future of corporates. You can start having corporates that are based on the DAO concepts. So that can disrupt not just banking, but other industries. But I think banking won't be immune to this. I think the question mark is how long will it take, given regulation, given social pressures, because you have regulation on one side trying to slow down some of these innovations because of risk, because of a lot of concerns that are, of
protecting
course,
the customer, right? It's
the main
customer protection.
Problem, regulators don't want to make things complicated. They want to protect people, right?
Yeah.
But people are in the middle. So you have regulators trying to protect them. You have people in the middle, and you have companies providing solutions. And the problem is people are here, and they're going to have to pen to one of the two sides. Either I'm concerned about safety, or I'm just concerned about experience. And so, people are in this spectrum of the ones more concerned with safety versus the ones that are really concerned with experience and easy, feasibility and easy usage of whatever it is that I need. And so once social pressure tends to this side, it's going to be very hard for regulators to contravene the social pressures. I think it's kind of like what we saw with Uber in some countries. So some countries wanted to protect against Uber, but people were so adamant that that's something that we need that they couldn't. They found alternatives to allow Uber to exist in those countries. So I think something similar will probably happen to banking. I just don't know what the time frame for that is going to be.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Banking is an industry right now is an industry that is continuing to innovate, of course, but it also needs to ensure that the stability of the system, customer protection. We are seeing, for instance, right now, we talked about crypto or blockchain, not blockchain, I mean crypto, right? We're witnessing the SEC from the United States doing a push against Coinbase, against Binance right now. What is a security? What is not a security? As far as we know, for now, Bitcoin and other things are not yet considered a security, but other coins are already being addressed as securities. So it brings a lot of challenges in terms of regulation, in terms of how you put those products in the market, for sure. And specific, yeah.
On that, sorry, I think it's that you touched something that is relevant as long as we're discussing technology. I told you I like technology, so bear with me.
Yeah.
I think the big problem of blockchain is people confusing it with crypto. Because the capabilities of blockchain to solve a lot of the problems that regulators are worried about solving is tremendous. You know, the control that you can have with blockchain technology in understanding the flow of transactions, the ownership of assets, it can make things very, very clear. It can help fight money laundering. It can help fight financing terrorism. It can help fight tax evasion. The problem is that cryptos became the blockchain conversation. And the problem is not crypto. You know, when crypto was created, it was to address a lot of problems that we still need to solve. The problem is that, like in any other market, you know, I can't remember which year it was, but there was it was an Englishman, a Scotsman, that started selling parts of a country that didn't exist. And you know, some years later, someone was selling land on the moon. So there's always these crazy people that take the next fashion and try to make money out of it. And a lot of people try to make money out of Bitcoin or other cryptos. The problem is that markets needed a boost, and people are hungry to find investments and to find alternatives.
Yeah.
But it's mind-boggling to me that people lost money on crypto or NFTs, because there's no intrinsic value in those things. You know, the only value of a coin, be it Bitcoin or other, is the fact that it is accepted as a method of payment. If no one accepts that currency, there's zero value. So none of the fluctuations in value had any real base, but people still kept putting money into it. So it's like a pyramid scheme based on a crypto. Everybody's trying to make money on the next guy and try and sell early enough so that I'm not going to be the one to lose. So I think if we want to make this something more sustainable, more real, we need to engage regulators into understanding the capabilities of the technology and not the product. So I think if they get on board, if regulators really understand the powers of blockchain, they can solve a lot of different problems with the usage of that, improving controls without necessarily increasing costs to carry those controls. So I think it's a very powerful tool that can be used to achieve the outcomes that the regulators want by giving what the client wants, because it can become very easy to use, very seamless, but giving the regulator a lot of control.
Sure, that's why I think it's we're witnessing a lot of governments and central bank authorities around the world, and even here in the region, right? They're already tinkering, they're already experimenting with CDBCs, right? The central bank digital currencies. Not all of those are necessarily based on blockchain. They're digital currencies. Some of them are blockchain based, but I I really think there's a space there that they need at least to experiment and see the possibilities of that particular technology. I think it's not going to replace on the next 5 or 10 years regular currency, right? But I think at least at a portion of the currency that is circulating on the economic system could start to be based on a CBDC, for instance, for sure. And that brings me to another kind of let me ask you this, based on this regional context or even the Angolan context, what is the most unique or challenge or unique unique challenges that we have in front of us, right? Technologically speaking, so to speak. So what do you think is different here from this region from the rest of, I don't know, compared to Asia or Europe or North America or South America?
We could do like 2 hours just on that question.
We don't have 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to try and be brief, but I think there's maybe I would point three main differences or three main things we need to start tackling to get us to a point where we can leverage those things the same way, North America or Europe or Southeast Asia are already doing. First is education, skills, right? If you look across, I don't know Northern Africa that much, but just let's focus on, Southern, Central Africa, and, Sub-Saharan Africa, basically. How many, IT skills do we have? How many people with proper engineering degrees, and even without degrees, if people learn to code on YouTube, that's fine. But how many people with those skills is there? So there's 1.3 billion people in Africa. How many have IT skills? So, because if we don't know how to answer that, and if we don't increase those skills, we're dependent on skills from the outside, which is tremendously more expensive. So that was one, is access to the skills and the development of those skills, I think, is one. The second is, for me, is the how do I put it? The maturity or the literacy of people as well. So, because to use technology, there's a lot of trust based in that. You don't use that if you don't trust what you're using. You need to understand what you're using. So it's not just the IT skills, is you need to increase literacy throughout the population so that they can understand what they're using. I don't need to be, an engineer to use an app, but I need to trust that what I'm using is safe enough so that I can use it rather than going and standing in front of someone to do a deal. So those two sides of education, I think, are important. The third piece for me is, the access to funding, right? So unlike many, maybe I should exclude Nigeria and South Africa, maybe Kenya and Rwanda. So there's 53, 54 countries in Africa, and if you exclude 4, the others have very scarce access to funding for whatever startup is being created. And if you look at the other continents, the real driver of exponential growth in technology were startups. It wasn't the big companies that developed new exponential technologies. It was startups. Startups and entrepreneurship is the future of work. It's the future of empowerment for a country and for a continent. So we really need to bring money to finance those new entrepreneurs, those new startups that are trying to build something different. And Africa still has less access to that funding, especially excluding those four or five countries that I've mentioned. I mean, maybe Egypt. I think they also have some access to big funding, but in most other countries, just talk about the ones we know best. Talk about Angola and Mozambique, for example. How many VCs have funded startups in those two countries? I think we can count it in two hands. And when you go, so there's a continent, excluding four or five countries that have, let's say 50 companies that were invested in that had big money coming in. You go to Silicon Valley, which is a part of a state in a country, and there's thousands of companies being funded. So there's a big gap in that access to funding. And that is something that we need to solve. So I think governments really need to work a little bit more on finding investors in the country, creating benefits, the same way that in other countries there were benefits for specific things that were needed. Maybe we need to give, fiscal benefits to people so that those people can become investors in startups, or for companies that might have liquidity that can find investing in startups as an alternative. So I think the skills and the funding are two very important pieces to tackle. And I think if we don't do those three, the technical skills, the general knowledge and the general literacy around not just finance, but technology, and then the access to funding. I think those are big things we need to battle to get right, so that we can close the gap to what other countries are doing. You have, this is for me is still mind-boggling. You have Europe and America thinking, digital, IA, stuff like that. Southeast Asia is already on voice and biometrics. They don't even have cards anymore, or, digital is not the main concern. The main concern is seamless integration of stuff.
No friction, right? No friction.
Yeah.
No friction between the,
we are still thinking of, stores and branches and app phones, phones. It's a very big gap between us and Southeast Asia. And I think Southeast Asia is what we need to use. And as an example, we don't need to go through the European or the North American route. We can leapfrog a lot of what's being done by looking at Southeast Asia and India also, because they've solved their different problems. But if you think India, Singapore, China, Japan, South Korea, you can find a lot of things that probably are more relevant for us here to adopt, but you need the skills, you need the money, and you need that focus.
Interesting. And Eduardo, do you think, I'm almost finishing on my side, at least. This has been very enlightening for me and for our viewers. I hope. I'm sure of it. But tell me, looking forward, and before I ask you this, let me just share with you. I was I'm also a user of Twitter. I like it a lot. Sometimes I spend too much time on it. Sometimes I think I need to tone down a little bit on my usage, my daily usage. But some people were, for instance, comparing, and you talked about the lack. One of the challenges, right, to address is the gap of talent that you need. How many programmers, how many software engineers do we have here, really, to address all the challenges that we have in all the opportunities in all sectors? And the African continent is going to be, I don't know if it's 2030 or 2050, one of the biggest, I think the biggest workforce in the world, right? So how can we take advantage of that? But at the same time, how can we, I don't know if we can say leapfrog some of the things, because there's at least in some countries, comparing to other regions, education not at the same exact level that would be advisable, infrastructure, uh, many things, right? And I've seen in someone sharing on Twitter this thing. This person specifically was invited to supervise two types of programmers. They're doing like an experiment, and I'll share with you later. But the thing was, one programmer to do the same task, the same job. It was someone from an Asian country, right? And he was using Copilot, GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT, and no code or low code tools, right? Then you had a German software engineer to do the same thing, but a hardcore software developer, okay, without all the fancy stuff and the AI stuff. And at the same time, I don't know if it was for 4 weeks or 6 weeks of work, the first guy presented like a bill of work of less than $4,000. So his work was like $500 plus all the tools that he uses, right? The ChatGPT, the Copilot, how much it cost, and 90% of the work was done, and they did the testing of all the functionalities. It was for an MVP product, of course, and it was working, right? Majority of it. German guy, only 7% of the work was done inside the scope, right? And total work, he was budgeting that 45,000K, excluding the tests. So because the world is becoming closer, right? This remote work, you can work from everywhere, especially knowledge workers. We are starting to see these disparities, right? So you have people that come from the so-called developed countries, right? North America or some regions or West Europe. But you have people that come from, Asian countries or maybe South America that can use and harness the power of these tools and could do it for a fraction of the cost. And my question is, for the next 5 or 10 years, what will be the evolution that will be more disruptive here for us? Do you see AI playing a big part in this and other technologies? I don't know, blockchain or edge computing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so actually, Ivo, I think that might be good for us. Because in a way, it would take us longer. So let's give my example. So I'm not a software engineer, so unlike you, I'm curious, but I can't do it. What do you think is easier for you? So you know all of these things, right? And you're looking at me, and I'm, an ignorant of this. I can't write a line of code to save my life. What do you think it's easier? To make me use tools like ChatGPT with prompt engineering and low code or no code tools, or to teach me to be the German guy? Right?
Definitely the first.
So because
full. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
So it's much easier to take this huge workforce that you mentioned, and if you think of Angola only, estimates for 2050 is that it's going to be 77 million people in the country. And, half the population currently is 15 years old or younger. So it's going to be a very young workforce that we can work with. And we can teach these things. We just need to get outside of the traditional schooling system, like I mentioned before. We need to start helping people, training people to be creative, to use the tools that are out there. We need to stop spending 12 years to make people memorize things that they can Google or go to ChatGPT and find out in 30 seconds. It from an investment point of view, makes no sense. Knowledge is out there. Knowledge is not a secret anymore. How you use it, how you leverage it, teach people logic thinking, teach people problem solving, teach people creative thinking, teach people how to engage with people and how to engage with technology. And I think for Africa specifically, because we are behind on the race of IT skills. We are probably behind all other continents combined. South America has a lot of IT skills, South Asia, just tremendous IT skills. I think probably Africa is behind in that race. But the fact that there are no code or low code, or now with prompt engineering, very smart and easy ways to use technology to do what you want that technology to do for you. That's what I was saying. I think we can leapfrog. We don't need to create that German guy to then have that German guy be the Asian guy. We can jump and use those tools. Make IT labor in Africa cheaper, but quicker and less dependent on outside consultants and outside technology. So I think it can be good if we take advantage of those things and we focus our youngsters. And if there's one thing, again, I'm going to talk about Angola. If there's one thing we have a lot is talent, and especially in the IT space, I've met young people, 21, 22, that have done things with, their phones are broken, their computers is like the keyboards is in one side, the screen is on the other side. They glue it together and they do some stuff, and it works. And then you go to them and you ask where they've learned those things, and it's either YouTube or with a friend, or part in school and part with some video somewhere. So you have talent. You just need to capture that talent and focus them into achieving better outcomes using the tools that are already available.
Yeah, for sure. I think banks will have a crucial part here in supporting all these younger generations. Your institution that you're part of, I know that you have programs, innovation-based programs that have the target and the goals to really foster this innovation and give the opportunity to all these young and talented people. So on my side, it's thank you so much. Digital transformation is my passion also. I don't know.
Right.
Victor, on your side, you want to take the lead?
Yeah. I would keep this point on technology and financial sector. But now back to our reality. Eduardo, how would you picture the current situation in Angola of the fintech industry or area?
Fintech.
Yeah, so Vitor, I think there's a huge potential. Again, there's many things that can make this market very interesting. The size of the market is one. We don't often think about these things, but it's a very big country. Yeah. And population-wise could be bigger, but it's already a big market. You're talking currently about 33 million people, and in the next 27 years, it can become more than double that. So the potential for growth in the fintech or startup space exists. Yeah. Now, I think the key component missing right now is probably two things that we need to work on. One I've already mentioned, so I won't repeat much on it. It's financing. It's available investment that is focused on the startup world and the fintech world, because good examples, good companies around the country you have good ideas, you have good MVPs, or in some cases companies that are already operating with good business models, but there is no scalability because there's no investment, right? And when you look at other countries, that's the key piece. I mean, if you can light the fire, but if you don't put any fuel in it, it will just remain at that level. You need to put some fuel to make it grow. And we don't have it currently. I think that's something that is lacking. The other thing is experience, right? So although there is tremendous amount of talent, and I'm always amazed. So I do mentorship for startups and for entrepreneurs, and I've dabbled a bit as an angel investor. I've done some investments, so I talk to entrepreneurs a lot, and you have a lot of good entrepreneurs out there, but they're all very young, and a lot of them never had any previous work experience before they started their startup. So everything they're doing now is for the first time, and they're learning as they go. It's not bad. Zuckerberg didn't work before he created Facebook, so it's not that it won't work, right? But there's a lack of experience of founders with some experience in corporate world, or at least the people that they then bring to the teams. It doesn't need to be the founder that has experience, but you start something and then you need to bring someone with some level of experience.
The team, right.
Grow and develop the company. Because having a great idea is just one part of the startup or the fintech succeeding. Then you need some organization. You need to know what your market is. You need to know what efficiencies you need to create. How are you going to tackle that market? What are you going to focus on? What features are you going to deliver? How do you market a product? How do you sell a product? How do you validate that product with customers? So there's a lot of stuff that, no one has ever done. So one good thing is that we already have some accelerators and some incubators that are doing tremendous work in helping these young entrepreneurs reach, the next levels. You have Angola, you have Founders Institute, you had Bantu Makers. I'm sure they're still there. You have Orange Corners. So there's a number of entities that are helping with this, but it is something that we need to work on. And then, if you talk about fintechs, we do need to become a bit more open as a market, less restringent on first movers and first starters. I think, there needs to be, although the central bank has LISPA, an accelerator and an incubator for new ideas, which is great, but it's one project for the whole country. So it's hard to make a movement out of just one initiative. You need more of those. You need more the initiatives that can create and incubate fintechs and allow them exposure with regulators so that there's the trust that thing can work and that idea is going to be well managed. I think we are a bit late in implementing open banking, which will be a keystone for fintechs to succeed and to be able to provide services that can make them add value to clients, but also be partners from banks, because banks won't be able to invest and do all of those things, but fintechs can fill in a niche of market once you have open banking regulated. So I think open banking is something that we need to work on to allow the fintechs to grow a bit more. And other than that, you have talent, you have ideas, you have people willing to put in the work. So I think it's just a few things that we still need to work on.
Yeah, and in the fintech area, do you see some segments that will especially develop and consolidate faster than others? Let's say it would be payments or credits or whatever.
Yeah, I think, I don't think Angola is going to be different from the rest of the world. So,
Right.
The big markets are the big markets. It's payments, it's credit. I think there is a niche that probably you don't explore much in Angola still, which is crowdfunding. That can be better leveraged through the fintech space. So I think those three, insurance, maybe combined with credit and payments, can be a niche interesting to explore. And with it's like a big opportunity for insurance, because like we were talking about the country, they can also leapfrog, because the sector kind of stopped many years ago in evolution. So if suddenly you come up with digital solutions that include insurance, that can be very good for the sector. Other than that, I would actually move out of the fintech space, and I would say that a sector in the tech space that can have a good margin of success is the reg tech space.
All right.
So you have a lot of fintechs, but you don't have a lot of reg techs, and regulatory issues are heavy in Angola. So I think the reg tech space is something to be explored by entrepreneurs that can find interest and passion in that niche. And I haven't seen many examples of those.
Yeah, you mentioned a bit ago that the startups and entrepreneurship are really the key driver for disruption and innovation. And yeah, you know quite well the Angolan reality, as you are an active player. If you are given, and you have mentioned several of the key pillars that you need to really develop a strong ecosystem. If you are given the opportunity to lead an organization to boost this ecosystem, what would be your priorities? What would be your focus on? What is really the trigger?
Oh, it's hard because what we need to develop is a type of work that is hard to put a business model on top of it, which is basically training and mentoring people.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have the funding, so the startup is in the middle of all of this. You have the startup and the entrepreneurs, right? What they need is help. They need two types of help. They need money to expand and mentorship / consulting / knowledge that helps them organize and grow their business. So they need those two things. But if they get the funding, they can get the other one, right? Because if they have funding willing to invest, but that funding comes with, a covenant. So the VCs or the investors can say, guys, I'm going to put money in your company, but Vitor needs to be your mentor. He needs to be on your board, and he needs to help you guys organize that. So that cash has this one condition. Other than all the other discussions, right? You need to help someone with a little more experience to help these guys organize and develop and grow. And so I think that's an interesting space to work on. But because you don't have the investors, you don't have the money that will pay these pool of talented people that can be those mentors. And what ends up happening is what you have now, is that those mentors do this on a pro bono base, but if they have the time. So I'm going to give you my example. I do this mentoring. I mentor some startups. I've never charged any of them. Sometimes there's this negotiation of maybe I get 1% of equity, 2% of equity. That's a big bet. You don't know if that's going to work, right?
Yeah.
But that's not sustainable, because if you want to do this for 100 startups, you can't rely on people to find time in their free time to do some pro bono mentoring when they can. It won't be sustainable. So I think that something that, as regulators and as a market or as investors and the startup ecosystem needs to find is we really need to solve for this investment pool to start allowing all of these, secondary jobs to be created around this space. But I think that will help a lot. In some cases, you might even be able to pay foreign experts that have already, developed or made some of these companies successful in other markets, and they have experience. And you start having some board members, even if it's an advisory board, that can, bring in a lot of value and a lot of experience. So there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of ideas. I think the funding is a big piece of what's missing. And I think as a country, as parts of the ecosystem, that is something that we need to help solve. And then talents and experience to be in some way or form part of those companies is important. But if you have some of that funding, then it will become easier. Imagine that you guys want to create a company that does business development and mentoring, right? Right now, you wouldn't be able to make it a business model if you're only focusing on startups because they have zero money to pay you guys.
Yeah.
So what would end up happening? You would stop working for startups and you would go do mentoring or consulting for the big companies. You don't need them as much because that's what pays the bills.
Yeah.
So unless you create a viable business model for that experience to add value to the sector, I think it's going to be hard to have these people like all of you. All of you could be mentors for startups. But if that's the only thing you're doing, it needs to pay the bills, right? So if not, you're going to do it on the side when you have the time, or you can dedicate 1 or 2 hours per week. Maybe you can do that, but it's not scalable. So if you want to for us to build a proper startup or entrepreneurial ecosystem, the key number one thing is it needs to be scalable. It doesn't work if you only have 10 startups. You need to have 5,000 startups.
Yeah.
With the rates of success of startups, even 5,000 is a small number, right? So we need to start talking about this in the market to really find ways of creating some track record with startups that brings other players on top of that track record. And with those players, other players will tag along. So the difficult thing is always to start. It's the first step. Once you get that first step, then it's going to be slow in the beginning, but things will start working.
Certainly. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Eduardo.
Yeah, and I believe that also there's this stigma whenever something fails here. If you fail 1, 2 times, you get like a stamp. You're no good. And when you're working with startups, you just need to try and fail and fail and fail. And we need to get that culture out as well. And this leads, it's like we're going back. When you decide to support a certain startup project, and I know you do as well, what is more important in your decision? What criteria are you going more for the idea, for the innovation? And what is the promoter's attitude that you're searching for?
So, Andre, for me, the number one thing is the person. Is whoever is on the other side of the idea. And I've learned that with my first investment that busted quite quickly. Why? Because it's not that the person wasn't good. She was very good. She was very smart. But the passion wasn't enough for her not to have a salary for a year. And so one thing, actually, in that trip that I mentioned to you guys about Singularity University, a lot of the people attending were part of the VC world. And I tried my best to extract some learnings from the different people around the room. And the number one that stuck with me was some stats. So we had a lecture with this lady. She's a partner in a VC firm in California. And she said that she gave Y Combinator as an example. So she said, of all the companies that apply, only around 6.5% stay in the program. So there's already a very big failure rate just after applying. So there's the funnel is quite thin. It goes from this to 6.5%. Of those 6.5%, so that becomes 100%. Of those, only 2.5% succeed as a startup. So if you start thinking about the initial number, that's a minimum percentage of success, right? So she ended her presentation saying, the only universal truth about entrepreneurs is that they're all crazy because they know these stats, but they still go for it. And then when we talked to her and we asked questions, one of the questions that we asked was, is there anything that stands out in whoever can be successful? You know, because there's a lot of studies, especially in the United States, but no one has found yet one or two things that correlate to success. So there's so many examples of things that failed that are similar to ones that succeed that it's very hard to find a deep correlation in things that VC funds look at to fund the business whilst they're not funding something else, right? One thing is the size of the deal, because every fund is looking for companies that have the potential to pay the entire fund. So that's already a big funnel there, because they're only looking for really big potential. But the one thing that she said that stuck with me is that from the deals she has made, from her own experience, the number one thing that correlates to success is the passion from the entrepreneur. That entrepreneur that doesn't imagine not doing that, that's his or her passion. I cannot not do this. I have to go forward. I don't care how difficult it is. This is what I was born to do. This is what I'm going to do. She says that having that is not guaranteed of success, but the number of people that succeed have this far more than the others. And so for me, that's what I try to look for in the person on the other side, is that passion. Am I doing something that is important to me? And the second thing is also about the person, but is the capacity of that person to strategize and see the next steps. So I don't care so much about the business model or the idea. If I think you're good, if that idea fails, I'm sure you're going to find the next idea and you're going to pivot and try again. But if you don't have that type of mindset, you're going to fail the first time, you're going to find a job somewhere else. And the business has died and the investment is gone. So those two things are the ones I look for the most, because the other things you can work with the founder. You can make a business model better. You can change the MVPs. You can change the product features. You can validate it with the market. You can validate it with the client. You can think about the pricing strategy. You can think about the organization of the company, the processes. You can work on all of that. But you can't work on the person's attitude towards what's coming. You know, is he or she adaptable? Is he or she someone that can strategize their own business? So they're proposing this idea. Do they understand it? Because a lot of people, let's face it, Andre, a lot of people are in entrepreneurship to make money. Mm-hmm. That's their number one reason. And when I feel that, I'm out. It's like Shark Tank. And for that reason, I'm out. Right? If the only thing they want to do is make money, it won't work. Because it's very, 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 very hard to succeed as an entrepreneur. And if you're in it for the money, you start failing in the next 6-9 months, you're applying, you're sending CVs to just find a job and have a paycheck. So that's what I look for most of all.
Attitude is your superpower. I think it's we go back. We go back. Eduardo, I think that this has been an amazing trip. Thank you for joining us. I think that this was the reason why we created the talks, is to talk with people that has ideas, that has knowledge, and that has the attitude to be here. Thank you very much in my behalf and in behalf of all my companions in the talks. And I'm sure that this won't end here. We will have many more opportunities to talk. We know that you're someone that we can count on regularly, hopefully. And thank you once again.
It was my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for thinking of me and inviting me. And I'm pretty sure this was longer than expected. I'm always being told that I speak too much. I need to really start synthesizing my thoughts. It was really good. So thank you for inviting me, for having me.
Brilliant.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. So you leave with a hint. Reg Tech, right? People listen. I also subscribe this. Yes.
Very much.
Reg Tech is coming. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Eduardo.
Okay, thank you again. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.